Hi, this is Brian with Midways. Is everyone on the line? And you're muted in the venue.
I think number no operation.
All I have to do. I don't know where to do that.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
Curious, how do I go to audience, lobby, booth, lobby, audience. I don't know how to kill it in there.
I mean, I only heard you, so.
Yeah, but I'd rather not be out. Hi, is everyone on? Looks like it got me again, though. Ooh.
Apologies, everyone. We have a board member who's trying to dial in, so they're trying to troubleshoot the connection. Just give us a couple minutes.
Hello, 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 hello.
We hear him. Can he hear us? Oh,
Hello? Are you? Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. All right, we're good. I'm going to put you live in the room.
Oh. All right, thank you.
Dr. Roundtree, can you hear us okay? Dr. Roundtree, can you hear us okay?
Dr. Roundtree.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Can you hear us, sir? It's like one directional communication. Dr. Roundtree,
Dr. Roundtree, can you hear us okay? Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
You say you still can't hear us?
Try that again. Make sure it wasn't coming in because I just turned on my speakerphone to connect with you. Can you hear the chair speaking?
I heard Linwood just a moment ago.
Dr. Roundtree, can you hear us?
Should be good.
Was that a yes?
You broke up.
Can you hear us okay? One more time, Derek. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Linwood.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me? Oh, cool deal.
Yep, we can. Great. All right. Thanks, everybody, as we diagnosed our connection there. Do I have a motion to return to open session?
So moved.
Ms. Purcell and Ms. Franklin, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to certify closed session that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered?
So moved.
Ms. Purcell and Ms. Franklin, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin? Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to exempt application 1 from compulsory attendance in Montgomery County Public Schools?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Purcell and Ms. Bond, any discussion? Your mic, Penny, I'm sorry.
When I vote no for religious exemptions, it is not because I don't want parents to be able to educate their children as they should, but as they would like, but there's no way for the system to know if children are actually being educated with reading, writing, and arithmetic, so to speak. And I think just like with homeschooled students, there needs to be a way to track that.
Thank you for that. Any more discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin? Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
No.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
4 in favor, 2 opposed.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to exempt application 2 from compulsory attendance in Montgomery County Public Schools?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Bond and Ms. Parton, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin? Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
No.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
4 in favor, 2 opposed.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to exempt application 3 from compulsory attendance in Montgomery County Public Schools?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Bond and Ms. Parton, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin? Ms. Parton? Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
No.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
4 in favor, 2 opposed.
Motion carries. And do I have a motion to exempt application 4 from compulsory attendance in Montgomery County Public Schools?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Bond and Ms. Parton, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Franklin? Ms. Parton? Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
No.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
4 in favor, 2 opposed.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Purcell and Ms. Bond, any discussion?
So I want to state that I vote no for the personnel report because I have concerns about our hiring practices.
At this point, no.
Not yet.
No, it's happening.
Any other discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Franklin, Ms. Parton,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries.
Chair Hudson, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the superintendent or his designee to have or appoint, to hire or appoint employees from July 30th to August the 19th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Just for context, I think the board realized today that the motion that we had made back at the beginning of the summer ended at this meeting, but then our next scheduled meeting would be after the start of school. So there's a multi-week gap in there that the administration would not be able to make hires for the start of school, and we want to correct that. Okay. If there's no other discussion, Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Franklin, Ms. Parton,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. Okay, next up, we have Juju Yang from Blacksburg Middle School with us tonight to sing the national anthem. Juju is from Blacksburg Middle School. Her choir director, Kelly Stevens, is also here with her. So if everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, for the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Okay, thank you, Juju. All right. Our next agenda item is public address. We welcome the opportunity to hear from students, parents, employees, and community members about education matters in this community. As a reminder, the board sets aside 30 minutes to start our public address. We have the option to extend in 30-minute increments, which Ms. Osborne will remind us of. If there are additional speakers after 90 minutes, the board will continue with their business meeting and hold one additional 30-minute session at the end of the business meeting. The clock continues through applause and disruptions. The more disruptions there are, the fewer speakers who get to address the board. I will call each speaker up by name in the order that they signed up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board. The board does not respond to speakers during public address. The screens will show when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining and when their time is up. Please state your name and the area of the county you live in. Our first speaker tonight is Kimberly Williamson.
Kimberly Williamson, Christiansburg. Dr. Braggett, I wish you well in your transition back to New Jersey. I will continue to pray for you, as is my practice, as you make that transition. Tonight, I want to compare my background in schooling to your world of DEI. Where I grew up, hero. My town has one of the only literally underground portions of the Underground Railroad. hiding slaves escorted by Harriet Tubman between the town founder's house and the town inn. I've been in that tunnel, appreciating just a small portion of what those slaves had to go through. My community had a growing minority of Laotians and Hispanics, with a smaller number of black folks, one of whom was the captain of our state championship football team. He wasn't handed that position out of some notion of equity, but earned that role through excellence. No one thought twice about that. I never heard anyone use the N-word until I heard it in shock after moving to the South as an adult. I grew up believing that word was relegated only to historical discussions and literature. It was not a part of the world I grew up in. To me and my classmates, we were all just that, classmates, without considering some division based on our ethnic heritage. No one insinuated one group was biased or victims or oppressors. I am a combo of 6 different ethnicities. My brother's wife brings 3 more, including Mexican and Native Mexican. My great nieces have 10. One is darker skinned while the other is light. I have a Japanese cousin, and I have a Swedish grandmother who arrived at Ellis Island as a teenage indentured servant to an older man. That's the nice term for slavery, even if legally limited by time and value. Black folks are not the only ones to have experienced hardships from others in this melting pot of a nation. But the incessant push for DEI and preferencing certain racial outcomes for school discipline, hiring practices, class enrollments, grading practices, etc., makes it seem like you think so. Americans are more nuanced than your colored boxes and the presumptions you place into them. And some have learned how not to pass along internal mindsets of victimhood to the next generations. Stop creating division and start creating victorious overcomers of their own perceptions of limitation. Treat people as individuals, not groups. Quoting a college friend who studied management philosophies, people are people and just want to be treated like people.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Next up is Carola Haas.
Thank you. My name is Carola Haas, and I live in Reiner. And I was just reading the proposed changes to student conduct, and I have only looked at them briefly, so I'm not sure if I understand all the nuances. But there were 2 things that stood out to me. One was the idea that you could suspend students for 364 days, and that would be separate from an expulsion of 365 days or more. And that seemed rather unusual, and obviously a 364-day suspension is quite extreme and could have severe consequences for somebody's education. So I hope you all have discussed that and have a good reason, or will not vote for it if you don't. And then the other thing I was a little bit confounded about was this elimination of this whole section on monitoring for disparities of outcomes and opportunities. And I don't know if that was just a reaction to these odd sort of anti-DEI efforts that we just heard, or if you felt that it was really not necessary in the Code of Student Conduct. Obviously, there's no way we can know if discrimination happens. I mean, I would hope that this lovely view of nobody ever discriminates, except the fact that she said she heard discrimination when she moved to the South. But if we had this lovely world, fine, but we won't know if we have a lovely world unless we're actually monitoring, right? So those disparities, I hope we're still collecting those data. And I know it was part of the hate speech policy, but I would assume it's also part of your policy on expulsions and suspensions, that we do need to know who is getting suspended or expelled, because again, the school system has documented from previous data that students with disabilities are getting much more targeted punishment, and recognize that people who have trouble regulating their behavior may have more behavioral violations. But again, as adults and educators, obviously it's the responsibility of adults to know how to help students who have trouble moderating their behavior, just not suspend them for 364 days. So those are just those two things that if you all don't have a good reason for them, I would strongly encourage you not to adopt the policy as it reads. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haas. Next up is Chris Waltz.
Chris Waltz, Christiansburg. Yeah, I hadn't really, the last speaker talking about the code of conduct. I think maybe y'all should look at one for yourselves as well. But I'm here to talk about, in your business meeting tonight, you have the school resource officer. Well, and you put in there public input, but I'm pretty sure the way you're doing it, I mean, it expired in March, saying that you had a meeting. I'm assuming it was at the school because I looked through the agendas and the meetings for this year, and it wasn't among any of y'all. So the law says that each school board shall ensure the current division memorandum is conspicuously published on the division website. It took me about 30 minutes to find it. That's not conspicuous. I had clicked through several links, and it was somewhere I would have never thought to look. And it also says provide notice and opportunity for public input during each memorandum of understanding review period. You're basically going to review it at a business meeting. You haven't given any notice. Or for generally when they state things like that, the government means have a public hearing about it so that the citizens can have their say. But as I've gotten from just the short time I follow this, I don't think you really care. I think that you all just think you should just do what you want and that that's your job, not to take the input from your citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no other names signed up, a public address is closed. And that takes us to our consent items. If no one wishes to move an item out of consent, we will consider these items approved. Okay, seeing no comments there, we will move on to our financial reports. Do I have a motion to approve the payment of bills as presented?
So moved. Oh, second.
Ms. Franklin and Ms. Purcell, any discussion? Okay. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond, Ms. Franklin,
Yes.
Ms. Parton,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. And that brings us to our business meeting. And first up is the report from the superintendent.
Thank you, Chair Hudson. Just a few things that I want to go over. One is all the facilities and capital updates that are taking place this summer. And first, I want to compliment and thank the school board and the Board of Supervisors for allocating those funds. We have a great many projects going on, and I just want to give you a little update on all of them. Obviously, you know, Christiansburg High School, that renovation, I would say, is halfway complete. There'll be a ribbon cutting I'm sure the board will talk about next week. But what that signifies is that the new project, the new building is done, that the students will move and staff will transition into the new construction that took place over about a year and a half. And while they're in the new wing, the older wing will be renovated, bringing the whole building up to speed for next year. A lot of effort went in there, a lot of work behind the scenes, and credit to all that were involved. As of today, it's still on time and under budget, so we keep our fingers crossed for that moving forward. But in addition to that, there were many other projects taking place. I know one of the things that the community was really excited about and was looking forward to is the new track down in Eastern Montgomery High School, and that's progressing nicely and will be ready to use for this school year as well. Long overdue, and they've waited a long time, so we're happy about that one. Roof replacements are occurring at Auburn Elementary School and Kipps Elementary School, ongoing right now, but those are some of the not glorious capital replacements that are required. to make sure our buildings are maintained in good standing, and those are taking place as well. In addition to that, a lot of parking lot repaving, restriping, resealing, window and door replacements at Montgomery Central. You can see that it's not all done yet, but it looks great, and it's not only going to be aesthetically appealing, but better to keep out the weather. Removing carpets in old classrooms. Actually, one of the gymnasiums had carpet, and replacing those with tile and vinyl flooring. And just all the regular maintenance that's going on in the summer and the work that our teams are doing, so the schools, well, all 20 schools will be ready for staff and students come, in a couple of short weeks. Credit to all them, credit to our new director, Mike Brown, for kind of coordinating those and a number of projects he just inherited. So that's going really well, and I'm thankful to be a part of that, wanted to share that. More good news. In July, for the first time, we had a feeding program where we provided meals for families that were in need. And I don't have the latest number from the 28th of July, but I do have the other 3 weeks that we did it. And it was over 7,700 breakfast meals were distributed and 7,700 lunches. Total of over 15,000 meals. That doesn't include the last day, so there's probably another 5,000 or 6,000 more on top of that. So a lot of credit goes to a lot of people. I know some members of the board volunteered to get the information out there too. But Ms. Knotts did a great job and coordinate that, and it was no additional cost to the district. And it indicated a couple things. One was that we have families that are in need in this county, and I'm grateful that we were able to put that together and kind of meet that need. So credit to everyone that was involved. It was a huge success, and I would imagine that we keep doing it moving forward. And lastly, for me, on a personal note, it's a little bittersweet, this meeting for me. It's the first public meeting since I announced that I would be resigning from my position as school superintendent. Really, the only reason that I'm doing this is I want to be closer to my family. Being 500 miles from, everyone that I know and love was a little harder than I anticipated it would be. This community is really great, and I was telling our new teachers yesterday, when people recognize you're associated with Montgomery County Public Schools, everybody comes up to you, and they always say a couple of things. Hey, my mom or dad were there. They were there for 40 years. I worked there for 35 years. My grandkids go there. My uncle was a custodian there, whatever it may be, but they speak with such reverence and pride about this school system, and it is really something special that all of you should be very proud of. And I'm happy that I was able to be a part of it. I hope in my departure I maybe made it a little bit better than it was when I found it. I hope so, but I wish you nothing but the best, and my last day is officially August 30th. I'll do all I can to help transition, and whatever I can do to help in that change in leadership. I thank you for the opportunity, and it was really a great time for me. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bragan. Board, any questions or comments?
Well, I will be really sad to see you go. I appreciate everything you've done for our board, and I consider you not only a colleague, but a friend, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
So I'm going to basically ditto what Ms. Bond said. It's been a pleasure having you here. You have really put in place some great things and kept the ball rolling with some things already in place. You've made a lot of good new changes and a lot of things for us to think about and consider in the future. And thank you for everything that you've already started and accomplished. I wish you well. I know you miss your family. I will miss you. I know that a lot of community members and employees and other board members will miss you as well. But I do wish you nothing but the best, and I hope you will come back and visit some if you're ever down this way. But I wish you nothing but the best with you and your family and your future endeavors. So thanks for all you've done.
Thank you.
And just thank you so much for everything you've done for our county, Dr. Bragan, and all the best. Maybe I'll let you know the next time I head up north myself.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura.
Dr. Roundtree, I can't see you. Let's give you a chance to speak if you want.
Yeah, I'd just like to add my appreciation for your service to the county. Thank you for everything that you've done the past couple of years. And also, I'd like to just give a shout out about the feeding program. Knotts and her team for that great program, feeding the kids of our county.
I'm not going to give you any kind words yet because you still got one more meeting with us. So I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna make you work. But one question I have for you is just, there are some in-flight efforts that you just want to make sure are covered either through new leadership or whatever else. If there's anything out there that you think needs the board's attention, needs decisions made. One in particular that I want to bring to the board's attention, I got an email from Michelle Braun, who from the Community Health Center about the health clinic. We had all agreed to move forward on that, and there was a meeting that was supposed to happen with you and them to kind of start planning, and they asked if we wanted to continue that, given your transition, if we wanted to pause it. So I guess I didn't want to make that decision unilaterally. I wanted the board to weigh in on that. But if there are any other kind of efforts like that in flight that you think the board needs to make decisions on how to handle, I'd appreciate your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely do what I can. One of the things, and I think it was on the personnel agenda tonight, approving an interim assistant superintendent, right? That'll help transition with some of those things that in my remaining time here, I will work closely with her to help transition those things, like working with the health center. I did go out and visit their program in Pulaski. It was very impressive at the high school there. And we were scouting out locations down in the Elliston, Shawsville areas where we were going to look. And then Dr. Kang, I guess, canceled that appointment because she figured I would no longer be part of it, whatever. But yeah, we'll transition that. There's a number of capital projects. Obviously, the biggest one is the high school project that's still ongoing, that we've had those transition meetings already with Mr. Brown and the team involved. So I'll put a list together or something that is ongoing, and that we're working behind the scenes, though, to transition with the administrative people that need to be involved. And I'll share with all the board if they have questions on it.
Okay, great. Board, any concerns with continuing to move forward with the clinic?
I actually was having a conversation with one of our nurses and wanted to visit Pulaski and Giles, I guess, to see exactly how the setup is and understand better what their roles will actually be with that in place.
Great. Okay. All right, great. Thank you. All right, next up, Katie Seidemann, our MCEA president, will present an update from the Montgomery County Education Association.
Good evening, Chair Hudson, Dr. Bragan, and members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to present you a report on behalf of the Montgomery County Education Association. First, on behalf of the MCEA, I would like to publicly give a thank you to Dr. Bragan for his leadership during his time with MCPS. Specifically, I think he is owed a large amount of credit for helping us all navigate collective bargaining when we first began that process, as it was new to all of us and there were a lot of unknowns at the start. While we did not always agree on everything, Dr. Bragan was always willing to work collaboratively with us to help find solutions that were in the best interests of our staff and our students. Dr. Bragan, I appreciate your time and your effort that you gave to both MCPS and the MCEA, and we wish you the best for the future. Secondly, I would like to share that the MCEA was set up yesterday on the first day of NTO to welcome our new hires. We were able to meet and chat with our new colleagues, as well as connect them with representatives in each of their specific buildings to make sure they feel connected and supported as they begin their time with MCPS. Lastly, on your agenda tonight is the finalized collective bargaining agreement for support personnel. Our collective bargaining chair, along with our administrative collective bargaining committee, have worked collaboratively with Dr. Bragan to create an agreement that benefits both parties involved. In a similar manner as our agreement for certified and administrative personnel, we are incredibly excited to have the opportunity to begin the 25-26 school year with active collective bargaining agreements in place for all employee groups. This is a huge win for all employees and for MCPS as a whole, as it sets us apart from other school districts in our area. And it shows that MCPS is a place that respects and supports its employees. We look forward to the full ratification of this agreement after your discussion tonight, and we appreciate your continued support. I would like to thank you again for your continued support of collective bargaining. We are consistently being recognized at the state level and by other local districts for our success in our collective bargaining efforts. And we are incredibly proud to be leading the charge in collaboration with MCPS. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to address the board, and I look forward to this type of communication for our next upcoming school year. Thank you, Chair Hudson, Dr. Bregan. What questions can I answer for you tonight?
Any questions or comments from Ms. Sedman?
When will the ratification vote take place?
So hopefully it will be ratified tonight by the school board, and then the vote for the employees will happen next week, Tuesday through Friday. So it will close on Friday.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you
very
so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, everybody's favorite topic, legislative policy revisions. Legislative policy adjustments from the 2025 state legislative session are presented for a first reading. The policies will be brought back on August 19th for approval. We have Nicole Chook from Sands Anderson with us tonight to help answer any questions.
Still red? No. Am I on? Okay.
There you go. You're good.
Thank you.
What are you doing, Dan? What are you doing, Dan?
Oh, yes. No, it's not. There we go. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Chair Hudson, board members. Thanks for having me. I don't want to go over these in great detail, but I'm happy to if that's what you all want me to do. I'm happy to answer any questions. I can say at a global level, there was a large focus on student health and safety in all of these, and in all of the legislation that is driving these legislative policy change or these your policy revisions. There are multiple policies where multiple bills amended that particular policy topic. Starting in Section 3, your business operations section, you have one policy revision related to the Public Procurement Act and specifically information technology goods and services contracts, whereby it allows you to deem a particular term or provision void if that contract includes that the governing law is somewhere other than Virginia, or requires or permits litigation in a different state. So if for some reason you sign a contract, I wouldn't let you do that. But if you sign a contract for information services and technology that has those two terms, they're deemed void so long as you adopt this policy. You can see that your procurement policies really reference the state agency procurement manual, but this is one that specifically has to be adopted by the school board in order to avail yourself of its protections. In Section 4, under support services, first want to draw your attention to an error, the third policy down that says 4-4.2 or 4-2.2, Department of Education Development of Guidelines. That should have been in the regulation information only section. So there is no policy revision that corresponds to that legislation. But the first policy change in 4-2.1, the legislature approved a new indoor air quality program for public school divisions and establishes several requirements, requires that you report and inspect at certain intervals. And now there's this separate chapter in Title 22.1 on indoor air quality for public schools. In 4-2.2, you're going to see several changes. The first is on that second page of the policy, and it relates to the requirement that each school adopt a cardiac emergency response plan or an athletic emergency action plan so that you can properly address certain cardiac emergencies that may occur on your campuses or during athletic programming.
To have those in place?
The timeline is now.
Now, July 1st.
July 1st.
The bleeding control program is another sort of program that you're required to adopt. However, that legislation did have subject to funding language in it. I was not able to locate language in the General Appropriation Act that spoke to this being funded. So, you know, if prior to the approval, your director of finance or whoever the appropriate person would be to reach out to DOE and confirm that, this may be one that can be withheld for the time being, because it did specifically have in the statute that it was subject to specific funds being appropriated in the Appropriation Act. The third change in this specific policy, 4-2.2, relates to where you can have the division superintendent and the school safety audit committee meet. You are allowed to meet on school grounds. In case you didn't know that, you can now. And then the last change relates to notification to parents when you have conducted a threat assessment, and that threat assessment has determined that a student poses a threat of violence to or physical harm to themselves or others. You are now required to provide those parents certain materials on the safe storage of firearms in the presence of minors, to include guidance on best practices and strategies for limiting a student's access to lethal means, including firearms and medications. Those materials will be provided to you, but you have, once they're adopted by certain other agencies, but you will be having to provide those to parents in those circumstances. And you'll see that again actually later on in the student section under when you have to notify parents of a suicide, an imminent risk of suicide, you also have to then provide those same materials in that circumstance as well. Any questions so far? Okay.
So Nikki, was it the bleeding control program
So
that,
subject to funding language,
the cardiac emergency and bleeding control, or just bleeding control?
just bleeding control.
Just bleeding control, okay. And there is another typo in that.
Was that the one,
Paragraph.
4-2.2? I apologize. There was an errant FCPS
Yes, there we go.
instead of
Got it.
MCPS. My apologies. That should be changed on page, whatever page that is, page 3.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, in the personnel section, you have
Got it.
two,
I have a question related
Yes.
to the threat assessments and the firearms.
yes.
So we do have community folks who pass out information to help make our students aware of gun safety and our parents aware of gun safety, including gun locks. So where it says approved materials, who is going to provide those materials and who approves it?
So the statute itself, in subsection G, this is in 22.179.4, requires the Board of Education, in cooperation with the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services and the Department of Health, to develop guidelines for the provision of materials on recognition of and strategies for responding to behavior indicating that a student poses a threat of violence or physical harm to self or others, and that those guidelines include criteria for selecting such materials, as well as materials that have been pre-approved for use by the board. So to be TBD, but the Board of Education and 2 other agencies are working on that.
Okay, thank you.
Policy 5-2.4 makes a sort of significant change to who you can hire who has a criminal history, and now permits school boards, essentially under the circumstances listed here, which are specific and all-inclusive, to hire violent felons or those convicted of a crime of moral turpitude so long as those felonies do not involve the sexual molestation, physical or sexual abuse or rape of a child, or the solicitation of any of those offenses. But those circumstances include you have to have had your civil rights restored by the governor, you have to have completed all your terms of supervision and have been released from supervision for more than 20 years. And in the opinion of the school board, be of upstanding character and demonstrate commitment to public or community service and rehabilitation after completing the terms of supervision, and the school board certifies in writing that such an individual meets the requirements set forth in this section and policy. So there is some flexibility here in hiring under those circumstances. It's not required that you hire, but you have the option. And then in that same policy on page 3, you have that same flexibility with respect to contractors. That language is identical. 5-2.6 relates to substitute teachers and extends from 90 to 180 teaching days, the maximum period of time during one school year for which a school board can employ a substitute teacher. The statute does lay out the circumstances again in which you can do that. You can't have been licensed within the last 10 years. Essentially, the circumstances and criteria for doing this are an attempt to limit someone sort of making an end run around getting a license and choosing to then substitute teach. So if you are going to hire someone for more than 90 teaching days, which is the current limitation, they have to meet the other criteria. That's 5.2.6. 5-4.4 talks about training for teachers. At first blush, this may seem very significant. I think ultimately when you read the details of this, it becomes less so, but the default is that no public elementary or secondary school teacher shall be required to participate more frequently than once within 6 months of new employment in the district and once every 5 years thereafter in any non-academic training activity. Again, there are caveats to that. This doesn't apply to requiring teachers to participate in training that is federally required. It also carves out 25 hours every 5 years for non-academic training that's required by state law. So to the extent you are requiring teachers to participate in non-academic training that is neither required by state law or federal law, you are limited to once every 5 years after their initial hire. Non-academic training is defined in the statute, and it means any training activity in which any public elementary or secondary school teacher is required to participate that is not related to the teacher's instructional, academic, or curricular duties. And again, it does not include any requirement relating to licensure.
So that's very, very ambiguous as to, unless it's about math, history, science, you can't require teachers to do any professional training.
Unless it's required by state law or regulation related to their licensure, related to mandatory testing, or related to or required by federal law. So I always use the example of Title IX. If you put a teacher in a position of having to serve in a Title IX role as an investigator, a decision maker, et cetera, they're required to be trained. That is required by federal law. That is not implicated by this limitation.
So any type of training or professional development that would help our students help our teachers serve our students, and I'm just going to say it more equitably, is not being seen as a part of their job.
I think it boils down to what your interpretation of curricular, instructional, their obligations in the classroom. I think that's pretty broad. I think it would come down to the school's interpretation, but I do have trouble coming up with something that isn't exempted from this limitation, actually. It's hard for me to name a training that I know of a client requiring that would be implicated by this.
Thank you.
And then also in that same policy up above, the school board must provide teachers and principals with high-quality professional development programs in communicating with and supporting students with autism spectrum disorder for any instructional personnel and school board employees whose duties include regular contact with students. And that includes the topics listed there. However, it sounds like a requirement, and then that last sentence makes it optional for that such professional development shall be optional, provided, however, that any instructional personnel or school board employee who completes it will be eligible for professional development points toward the renewal of their license. So optional, but there's a carrot given. There is some very strange legislation that was passed this year that included all sorts of caveats, and there's a bill later on that we'll get to that tells you to consider something. That's what it says in the statute. School board shall consider. So it's a requirement, but not a requirement. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I guess not. Moving on to the instruction section, there are two policy revisions here. One relates to the establishment of career and technical student organizations. Again, a very targeted bill that I'm not quite sure what they're getting at, but it states that each public middle school and high school, regardless of whether such school offers career and technical education courses, may establish career and technical education student organizations, except in the case of any such organization that is established as a federally chartered corporation pursuant to an act of Congress. It's not even described in the bill summary, so I couldn't tell you.
So does that mean that a school couldn't have a NASA club?
I don't know if that is what is considered a federally chartered corporation pursuant to an act of Congress. I suppose you could read this as you can't establish it unless you have it at your school. If you're not offering career and technical education courses, you can't have it. But if you are, yeah. It is middle school and high school, yes.
Students as to what the opportunities will be once they get to high school.
I mean, I'd have to look into what that actually is, what a federally chartered corporation. Obviously, this is an organization that someone disapproves of, but it is now in state statute that you can't have it, regardless of whether you offer the course. In my view, that means if you do offer the course, you could have it. Sly.
So why don't they just say what they need?
I know, I agree.
At first, I thought that was being more inclusive because you could have a club
Right.
at your school, even if you didn't have the courses offered, right? That's cool.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what the federally chartered corporation part is.
And then the second policy revision is, in this section is 6-3.9. And this addresses eligibility for students in grades 5 through 8 to enroll in advanced or accelerated mathematics based on the following criteria. I believe this statute contemplates school divisions coming up with their own criteria. We included the examples that were listed in the statute. So to the extent, your instructional staff needs to weigh in on this, you might want to take a look at that number 3 that's listed there. Because again, we just included what was already listed in the statute and it's as an example. If you want additional pathways to enrollment in these courses that are specific to Montgomery County Public Schools, that's where you would add those pathways. And then finally, section 7 related to students. We have a couple of changes in your student records policy. One is related to if you have a student or parent that participates in the address confidentiality program pursuant to 2.2-515.2 of the Code of Virginia, the street address or route number shall be provided to establish residency, but shall not otherwise be made part of the student's educational records. That program protects domestic violence victims. They would have to let you know that they're a part of that program, and they have to be certified by the Office of the Attorney General to keep that information separate. And then also on page 3, upon written request of a foster parent, an MCPS employee shall redact the address of the foster parent prior to providing the student's parent any record containing such address. Um, 7-2.2 permits flexibility in the case of a parent who is on orders elsewhere and has to have that student reside in your school division with a relative. There are certain conditions that have to be met in order for that child to enroll in your school division. And these are permissive. It's not a requirement. Cell phone policy, everybody's favorite cell phone policy. This is 7-3.3. Your previous policy was pretty much in line with what was passed by the General Assembly. However, certain definitions changed and descriptions of cell phones, so we updated that. And then also there had to be a change to the disciplinary consequences because the statutory, the statute on this prohibits you from suspending or expelling a student for violation of the cell phone policy. So you had that in your subsequent offenses section of this policy, so that had to be rewritten to comply with the statute. Also, on page 2, the implementation and enforcement of this policy cannot be the responsibility of the teacher solely. It puts the onus of responsibility on the school administration to implement and enforce, and requires that you minimize, to the extent possible, any conflict with a teacher's instructional responsibilities or any disturbance to instructional time. And it also prohibits you from involving the SRO in any of these policy violations, in these specific policy violations. 7-4.3, we have 4 different bills that amended this policy. First, you have the requirement for a middle or high school student to submit a signed pre-participation physical evaluation form. If you don't, you cannot be deemed eligible for participation in athletic, on an athletic team or squad. The second change, those were the first two bills under that pre-participation physical exam. And then on page 3, you have again the cardiac emergency response plan requirement, because it is very relevant to this particular section. If you have the athletic program at that particular school. And then finally on page 4, there is an extreme heat and safety protection requirement for you to comply with VHSL's evaluation of when you should modify your programming based on certain wet bulb globe temperature levels. That is what they use to recommend modifications either to timing of events, equipment, or suspension or cancellation of practice or competitions. Also requires that all athletes be given unhindered access at all times to hydration and cooling spaces, and be provided ice specifically when there is a WBGT level of 80 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. There are other requirements, but again, a big focus on extreme heat exposure, and there are reporting requirements as well in this bill. Moving on to administering medicines for students. The revisions to this policy account for the requirements regarding seizure rescue medication and the authorization to administer it. This is very similar to language you already have with respect to epinephrine, albuterol, naloxone. It exempts certain individuals from liability if they are using it to address a student who is experiencing a seizure. A student can be permitted to carry their own medication so long as their parent has submitted a seizure management and action plan that includes their written consent and approval by their primary care provider, and the school nurse has been notified ahead of time of such self-possession. And then, of course, requires that you have to be trained if you're going to be the one administering that medication. Sure.
How does Narcan play into this situation, or does it at all? No.
It doesn't. This is separate.
Region.
This is all seizure related. It's different.
I was reaching, I was hoping, but anyway. Never mind.
Okay. 7-5.7, this is that second bill that I mentioned earlier with respect to notifying parents. I'm sorry, this is the overdose bill. I skipped over that one. This is the overdose notification bill. That was an executive order last year, has now been codified, and it requires each school principal or designee to notify the parent of each student enrolled in the relevant public elementary or secondary school within 24 hours of the earlier of law enforcement or medical personnel confirming a school-connected overdose, or the school principal having knowledge of a suspected school-connected overdose. It requires the information, the notification to parents require information available at that time on the name or any identifiable features of the controlled substance and whether that confirmed or suspected overdose occurred on school premises during regular school hours or during school-sanctioned activities, whether on or off school premises. That is the only thing that has to be in that notification, and only if you know it at the time within 24 hours of the confirmation or the suspected school-connected overdose. The method for communication to be used is that which is considered regular forms of communication. You also have to provide that notification to the Department of Education. And if you find out later that you were wrong, it was a suspected overdose, and it turns out that's not what it was, you have to update your notification to the school community. Or if you were wrong about the substance, whatever you're wrong about, you have to correct it and resubmit that to your school population.
And this is whether or not it occurred on school grounds or not.
Well, there's a definition of school-connected overdose that would include, I believe, I'm going from memory because I don't have it in front of me actually, it would be a school-sponsored activity as well. So if it's within your jurisdiction generally, because it's your activity, you're taking students somewhere, that would be considered a school-connected overdose. But again, if it's that would likely be suspected unless law enforcement or a medical professional told you that's what it was. They have confirmed that that is what occurred within your program or activity or on your school property. And then finally, this is that bill that specifically states in statute that you have to consider adopting, but you do not have to adopt this policy. But for the purpose of increasing access to healthcare services for students, you have to consider developing and implementing policies for permitting any public school student in the school division to schedule and participate in telehealth services, including mental health, teletherapy services pursuant to a memorandum of understanding with a nationally recognized school-based telehealth provider developed in accordance with applicable law on school property during regular school hours with parental consent.
So if we were to adopt this, that means we would have to find a certified provider, provide a location for this to be administered.
Mm-hmm.
And what's our responsibility to notify community that this is what we're doing? That it's just a part of our mental health program?
Well, you'd be adopting the policy.
Right. Okay.
But do you mean notifying the school community or the greater community that you're doing
The
this?
school community.
Oh, well, yeah, you'd have to let your students know that it's available to them.
Sometimes it's not as.
And students already have access to a mental health, telehealth program, correct, Dr. Bragan?
They do.
And do you know if they happen to have appointments during the school day? Is that something students, parents, and administrators have been navigating without a policy like this, or is it typically outside of school hours?
I don't have that information. I can get that for you.
Thank you for going through all those for us.
Sure.
School board, any questions now that we've gone through everything? Dr. Roundtree, any questions from you, sir? I want to make sure you're not left out.
Nope, nothing that hasn't been already addressed. Just thanks for going through all that, Nikki.
I guess my main question would more be to the administration. There's a lot of stuff in here that it's not just wordsmithing and happy to glad. There's like new actions to be taken, potentially, right, in a variety of places here. Any concerns from an implementation standpoint? Anything that needs to be brought back to the school board for further approval or funding or what?
I think the next step, what we normally would do is bring these proposed policy updates to our leadership team kind of talk about implementation and what we would need. If we need anything additional, we'll come back to you on.
Okay. Board, any other questions before we move on?
I'm still really caught on the career and technical education. Because even when I read it in the first document and then went to this, where you integrated it into our policy, Nikki, I had interpreted it completely differently. I don't if we could get some more context about what a federally chartered corporation means, because FFA is a federally chartered corporation that we have very successful FFA clubs at the middle school and high school level here, and we do have classes that support them as well, but I don't know. I just don't, I don't understand that one, and I guess if we're required by state code to do it, I don't know, we need a little more information so we can explain it well to our constituents. And I had one other question, and maybe it was a misinterpretation of mine from the spring, and maybe first it goes to Dr. Bragan and then you, Nikki. I seem to recall having a conversation with Dr. Wickham where typically the division would provide access for students to get their athletic physical kind of at the end of the school year, and then that wasn't something that we could do in the same way this year, and I thought that had to do with some kind of rule revision somewhere. And is that captured in this, or was that something else?
Okay, I have to look into that. I don't remember what that was. There
Remembering
was something that
correct?
came up, but I thought we had a workaround, and I don't want to speak on it and say something wrong. I'll get more information.
Nikki, was that anything that's no, not okay? Okay, thank you.
You board, anything else?
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is related to what you were talking about, Laura, but in some places, the schools or the booster clubs or whoever would have physicians come in and do like mass physicals for students, so it wasn't such a burden. Do we still do any of that?
There was an issue with that, and I don't remember it specifically, and I think we had a workaround, but I'll get more information on that. Something did come up that was different this year that we had to address.
Thank you. It just, it's an issue of equity. I think it can really be a huge barrier removal when kids can kind of easily take care of that process. It's not an extra cost and appointment for parents. So thanks, Dr. Bragan.
Okay, great. We'll move on to our next agenda item. So we agreed to move up the revisions to the Student Code of Conduct. So the administration provides an updated draft Student Code of Conduct policy for approval before the school board. Policy revision received a first read at the end of July, was tabled in order to propose a separate hate speech policy, end of July 2024. Was tabled in order to propose a separate hate speech policy. Following the approval of the hate speech policy, the Student Code of Conduct policy was presented again on April 1st and May 6th of 2025. The revision presented tonight reflects the original changes from last year, the work of Mr. Howard's Student Disciplinary Action Committee, and Executive Order 14280, reinstating common sense school discipline policies. Changes are noted in red line correction with the most recent suggestions highlighted in yellow. Jason Garrettson, our Director of Student Services, is available if there are any questions. I think it would be useful just to kind of hear some kind of summary in terms of what we're looking at tonight in comparison to what we saw last time.
Yes, sir. Good evening. as was stated in the introduction, we brought the policy forward to the board about this time last year, really just for some typographical errors, organizational pieces, pretty minor corrections. Also, we included some information that had become pertinent based upon some recent disciplinary board hearings, just kind of some things that the board had kind of suggested through conversation. Hey, we need to stress this better. We need to be sure to make this point. We need to emphasize this. That's what we brought forward about this time last year. That conversation, there is an element around, I'll go ahead and call it hate speech. There's a section in the Code of Conduct that kind of got at hate speech. The board determined at that point they wanted a separate policy regarding hate speech, so it was tabled. I believe we introduced a hate speech policy in January. We came back in the spring, and at, I believe, those two times, the board made some additional suggestions, wanted some references, I think, to some specific Virginia codes, wanted some suggestions or wanted some additional emphasis, again, on some things, if I remember correctly, threats and threat assessments, I think. Also a little bit more detail around the point of the anything beyond a 45-day suspension up to 364 had to meet special circumstances under Virginia code. And then we did have a section where we had originally moved a section about disparities of outcomes and opportunities. We had moved it to a little bit of a different place in the Code of Conduct in terms of what we felt added to readability and just the sensibility of the flow of the document. Since then, there's been some questioning around, is that a little too specific? Is that a little too prescriptive for policy? And then, as we mentioned in the introduction, there does seem to be some guidance coming from the federal level that says perhaps that shouldn't be part of the policy altogether. That's a quick summary. I think there are a fair number of changes represented in the document. You see a lot of red, a lot of yellow. I'm happy to try to field direct questions. I will also say that, as it mentions in the introduction, it's more of a team approach. So I'll answer those things that I feel comfortable. And if I need some help, I hope the board will allow me to invite up a peer or two.
Great, thanks for walking us through that. Appreciate it. I guess before we move to our motion, I think it's valuable, since we're seeing this for the first time in a couple of months, just to open it for any questions or comments now, if the board has any. Anybody want to start?
Okay, so by eliminating tools to monitor what's going on, especially around the disparities that are, very well documented throughout the district, makes absolutely no sense. What's the point of it's just staying right where you're at? We're just going to close our eyes and hope for the best.
I don't believe anyone's closing their eyes and hoping for the best, and that's an inaccurate portrayal of that. I think
That's not what I was stating, how I stated that.
you just said close your eyes and hope for the
I said,
best.
so what does that mean? We just close our eyes and hope for the best? I did not say that's what we were doing.
Okay. Nonetheless, when we looked at the things that were removed from there and those ratios and risk ratios, they were not compliant with the executive order as our interpretation of it. And we're not saying that that's not activities that should and could take place and do take place when we analyze data outside of the policy, as our practice is what we've always done, at least since I've been here, to try to look at disparities and address those proactively. Our thought was, as the administrators of the division, we didn't think it was appropriate in the policy and in direct violation of what we were instructed to do by that executive order. That's why that was removed.
So my question is, where else will this be implemented so that we are monitoring and we understand what behaviors are happening?
The goal would be what we do now with our practices and our regular review of discipline that we do with Mr. Howard, who couldn't be here, he's on vacation. Minimally, we do it quarterly, but we do it more regularly than that, probably more on a monthly basis by school and and then we do it as a collective with the principal meetings that we've been doing that over the course of this year. We did it definitely quarterly when we got the quarterly data, and we compared year over year and month over month information. And that would continue. The thought was that it just doesn't belong in policy from our interpretation of what the new executive order and some of the other laws were.
So if we don't put it in policy, then at any point that practice could just go away. Correct?
Yeah, I imagine that would be the same with anything that's not in policy.
So if it's not put in policy somewhere, it can just go away. So it's important that it is in policy. And that is one of the things that has been stressed by myself and other board members and community, that it needs to be written in policy somewhere, that we are monitoring the disparities that happens between our children.
I guess, Nikki, you didn't come here necessarily to speak to this, but I kind of hate to put you on the spot, but I love to put you on the spot. If you have any opinions based on what you've seen here, I assume you can see it or have gotten a copy of it. Okay, Roger.
Sorry. Chair Hudson, I'm just seeing it, and I have not reviewed that executive order recently, so I don't want to contradict anything that your administration has said. I can add that this language is not required to be here. It's not a requirement under state law that your code of conduct include this language. And I think it probably could be interpreted to be in violation of that executive order, but I don't want to, I feel at a disadvantage since I haven't reviewed that executive order recently.
Our compliance officer came forward. Lee, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Did you have something to share? Please,
absolutely.
Hi, Leah Bressler, Compliance Officer. Good evening. The provision also, from our standpoint, could present problems in the conduct proceedings themselves. A conduct code is similar to a criminal code with the community. And so we want to keep it as tight as possible to violations and consequences because we want the hearings to remain on point with violations and consequences. By putting this information here, it's not that it's bad information or that anybody's shying away from the information. We do this every day. We respond to this data, and it's embedded in many job descriptions throughout our system. I have part of it. Mr. Howard has part. Ms. Wright has part. Director of Special Ed has part. So that it's in. It can't. I disagree that it could go away, but if it's the board's prerogative to put something like this in policy, I would bifurcate it from the student conduct policy so that we don't end up in our hearings having discussions about what staff did on the back end with information instead of focusing the hearings on objective evidence of whether the violation happened or not. We cannot take any protected class into account during that process. And so whatever happens during that process happens, and then we issue it. This deals more with what we do with the data. What do we do with what happens out of that process? And it's a separate area. So if you're to put it in there, I would just separate it from this particular policy because this policy is used quite a bit by the public, by our staff. And to put it in here is procedurally a little bit confusing and could cause some misinterpretation. We want everybody's outcomes to be based on the facts and the evidence, and we don't want anybody engaged in any practices to develop outcomes based on policy rather than just have the hearing, get the hearing result. So it's not that we don't want this portion in here. We embrace it, we do it every day. We want it not to be in this particular policy for those practical reasons or to risk any potential loss of funding. So, thank you. A potential loss of funding if we are found in violation of Title VI.
Does anybody else have anything? Okay, so when you're talking about doing a disciplinary hearing, many of our conversations do refer back to what we believe we're being consistent with how we're treating students and monitoring what we're doing as far as disparity, as far as how many students from different groups that we're seeing versus another group. That's part of what things that the board uses to figure out if we need to do something different by what's coming in front of us many times.
Okay.
So I don't understand why this would be confusing to be in this policy.
It's not, it's sort of like if you think about the criminal code. We have a jaywalking statute probably. And so that statute would include both a definition for jaywalking and also the consequence if you got caught jaywalking. But it would not include a list of what the state should do if jaywalking became an issue. Because then trials on jaywalking would turn into a large trial on what's being done rather than what happened. It's not that the state's not going to take responsibility and take action based on how the law works itself out with the population, but to put it in that particular code right there. As I said, the objection here is to put it in the student conduct code. I think it's a fine provision. I would put it somewhere else that deals with how we are to handle the data rather than how we're to handle the student conduct.
I'm still, in all my years of dealing with student discipline and understanding how conversations can occur because of how many students we're seeing from a particular group in front of us, which again helps us understand we need to be looking at something else so that we don't see as many students from one particular group as we do another, because it seems unbalanced. So where would you suggest that it be?
Well, what I can say is take this year, for example. In response to the data collected, Mr. Howard, myself, Mr. Garrettson, and Ms. Wright, we're bringing in, simple discipline has been brought in to help collect and capture the data. I'm bringing in due process and training and methods of the policies themselves, how to apply them. Ms. Wright comes in with her expertise to bring in the specific fixes, for lack of a better word, but the interventions and supports that are required when we get that data. And so those are all embedded throughout the job descriptions. My suggestion would be to put it in a separate policy if you wanted to put it in a policy, but not in the student conduct policy, because the student conduct policy really should stay focused on, here's the violation, did the violation happen? Right? And then for the back end of what we do about violations, that'd be a fine place for a different policy. But I think to put it inside that policy, you run afoul of not just the order, but also the misinterpretation that it should be used to decide hearings when we know that Title VI requires us not to use that as a measure.
Okay, and I'm not saying, I'm agreeing with you. It should not be used in this case, but it's still, somewhere along the way, it should be written that this information is there, because as we have seen here lately, anytime somebody doesn't want something to be looked at, they just do an executive order or write a bill and say, we're not looking at that anymore. We're not going to do that anymore. And we're going to take your funding away if you do, which is not fair to our students and our families.
What I can tell you is that as the Title IX coordinator, for example, my obligation is to review that data. And if I see data that indicates there's an issue at a school, or we have an increase in numbers out of nowhere, it's my job to watch that data, not only to look at that data, but to design and go in and do those prevention programs. And Mrs. Wright has a similar charge with Title VI to go in and design those programs. So we have those things and those measures in place, and that's why we are doing those things. And it's why we've brought in the simple discipline and the guardian, and we're going through all the trainings. It's to make sure that we're all on that same page. We just did a site-based coordinator training a week ago where we got all of our site-based coordinators involved to help us develop a code sheet for the different behavior codes to help us bring consistency across the district. So that if you have a cursing violation at Falling Branch, it's coded the same way as the violation at Shawsville Middle School. That way that the data will read better. So we're doing all those little things behind the scene in addition to the big things like training our staff on how to do the investigation, the due process, how to identify the hate speech, how to code the hate speech, all those things as well. And so hopefully between all of the different people with pieces of this, we're all coming at it from our area. So Mr. Howard's coming in with his curriculum on redesigning intervention and reteaching behaviors, where Mrs. Wright's coming in with her curriculum and training on equity matters. And so when we all come in to respond to the data that way, it's not any one person's responsibility because the data spans the whole district. And so while I service Title IX and Title VI, Mrs. Wright's area is in equity. The director of SPED is going to be looking at those issues. And so that way we can get the expertise you need, the subject matter expertise, in the area that you need it.
Great. Glad to hear that's happening. But for me, somewhere within our policies, even if it's a standalone policy that we do, this needs to be incorporated somewhere in the district. Because if it's not, at any point, it'll just go away. And as our attorney has said, there are lots of things that we have in our policies that is not mandated by the state or required by the state because we want to do above and beyond to make sure we're doing the right thing for all of our students.
Absolutely. And we work for you, and whatever your prerogative is, that's what we'll do moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions?
Board members, any other questions? We can go around if you want, Ms. Patel.
So would it make sense to pull this from the code of conduct, because it's really, the code of conduct is really about behavior, and to put that struck language, I'm looking at the same thing that's projected on the screen, that struck language into a policy that's maybe, so section 7 of our policies is things that govern students. Article 1 is just general administration, so putting something there about like how data is regularly reviewed.
That would be
something, so that way we know that we're being accountable and there is this regular, regular process that we're sticking to, so that it's just formalized and it doesn't get
Absolutely.
forgotten.
And the work itself is not in violation of Title VI, what we do on the back end. The violation occurs when we've got it in the conduct policy where we're doing the front end work. And so it's not that the district embraces this work, we do it every day, and we're happy to support it any way we can. We just don't want to take a risk for no reason.
Hence, I think a fair kind of next step, if this policy gets approved as is, with that taken out, perhaps a follow-up motion to pursue a new policy to bring that back and whatever else needs to happen there. Okay. Dr. Roundtree, I skipped your virtual spot here. Do you have any comments?
No problem. Laura's comments were actually what I was going to get at as well. I think that we just need to take that information and put it in a standalone policy, or subsection of policy, and getting the administration tasked with writing that up and putting it into an appropriate section would be good.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Ms. Bond?
I agree. I think the code of conduct for students needs to be as simple and as easily read by students and by parents possible. And if we want to go further with another policy that explains and is something more that someone can follow as a ruling of what we expect, that's one thing. But the student code of conduct needs to be kept simple.
Ms. Pardon?
So I have two questions. One's for you and one's for Nikki. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't most of this and what's been discussed already in our discipline policy?
A great deal of it, yes.
Okay, so basically that's pretty much out there of how we handle what
We
is
do
taken
this-
from the code of conduct as far as how it's implemented.
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. That's what I thought. And Nikki, what are your thoughts on a separate policy, considering what we signed as far as the executive order and this being put separately in a policy?
I cannot get this right. Okay. So again, sort of piggybacking off her comments with respect to it being embedded in the code of conduct, I tend to agree, again, with the caveat of not having reviewed the executive order recently, that giving the impression that these things are considered as part of the discipline process on the front end could cause an issue. So having it stand alone is more of a, we're addressing this preventatively, given the data that we've collected. These are the things we need to look at as a division to address so that these disparities don't occur in the future, I think puts you in a better defensible position.
Okay, great. I'm in agreement with everything that's been said. Any other comments before we make a motion for the student code of conduct? Dr. Roundtree, are you still there? Maybe not. Okay. Go ahead and hold on. Get my junk here. Okay. Yep. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the student code of conduct policy in order to be in place for the first day of school for the 2025-26 school year?
So moved. Second.
Any more discussion? Okay. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
We may have lost him. Yeah.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion carries.
So, Mr. Chair, so as I also suggested that it may be put in a standalone policy or someplace else, I move that we have the administration bring back to the board either a more appropriate placement or a standalone policy to address the issues around disparity and monitoring.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion around that? Dr. Roundtree, are you back? Yes, I am back. Okay. Great. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Dr. Roundtree, are you back?
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Yes.
5 in
Yes,
favor.
I'm back.
Motion carries.
Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
All right. Jumping back up to the collective bargaining agreement for school support professionals is presented for approval. Do I have a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement for support professionals?
I think the board has
Dr. Roundtree, are you back on?
unanimously pretty much.
Yes, I'm back on.
That when something is brought.
I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat that?
That we have a first read.
Yes, I'm back on.
We vote
All right.
on the second read. So if you don't mind, Superintendent Dr. Bragan, this is the first time I recall seeing this from the bargaining unit on this particular issue. So I would like to move that this is a first read and that we have time to go over, ask questions, and all of that type of thing like we do with all of our other policies before the board takes a vote on it. Is this the first time we are seeing this, or am I incorrect?
This is the first time that the approved copy's been before the board. Yeah, we got this from the board attorney about a week and a half ago. The final copy that they got from the MCA attorney, I believe it was Mariah, is her first name.
So what is put before us tonight is in line with what happened with the other two groups that we approved. It was put on the agenda. We have been made aware that this was coming. So I don't understand the issue here.
If we're going to follow policy, I think we need to follow policy with everything and don't make exceptions for anything else. Once it's brought to us for a first read, this is the first time I'm reading it. So if there is supposed to be a vote on it tonight, I will be voting no on it.
So why was there no objection to the other two bargaining unit agreements before? This is the same thing that's been brought before us before.
We got that information before we voted on it, and it was, we didn't approve it till the second read.
It was in our board packet, and I don't remember that we did first or second reading. Can you pull that up or point it out?
Dr. Bragan, do you care to elaborate on that, please?
I'd have to look at exactly what we did, but I know I can remember back with the professionals and the Teachers Association, we had a number of discussions in closed session because it was brand new. We talked about some specific topics, and we talked about the process and the procedure for me and how we were going to entertain those comments and questions. I don't remember exactly how we did it first read, second read, but I know we discussed individual items before we presented the final one for approval because it was just brand new.
So the only thing I remember us having a discussion over was with, I believe, the administrative agreement, that there was an issue and you wanted to explain to us what it was and how it had been resolved. And then it was on the agenda and we approved it.
I believe that did happen with the administrators' collective bargaining agreement, and we did talk about that. There was one particular area that we talked in closed session and we had a concern about, but we did look over the whole thing before we approved it. But I was talking about the teachers, which happened about a year before. There was discussions throughout because it was brand new for us at that time.
Right. And that was through the whole process. There was a lot of discussion until there were agreements reached between each of the groups, and then it was brought before the board for approval. And when there was an issue, you did bring that to the board's attention with the administrators.
I actually thought this was the second reading.
No, it's not.
It's been a confusing summer.
But if we're going to follow policy, we need to follow policy with everything.
And if this is what happened with the other two, then it would not be fair to say, no, we're not going to do this now. And is this considered policy or is this an agreement?
Well, the way to figure that out is to vote, isn't it? At this point. And if board members would prefer to have it come back for a second read, then they can vote that way as a part of the motion.
I believe it's unfair to our employees.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement for school support professionals as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Franklin and Ms. Purcell? Any other discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
No.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
No.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
4 in favor, 2 opposed.
Motion carries. Okay. Next up, Policy 1-2.8 states that the Montgomery County School Board shall approve the student school board representative each year. The representatives serve a one-year term that will end on June 30th, 2026. Selected representatives are as follows. From Auburn High School, Laura Altizer. From Blacksburg High School, Olivia McNulty. From Christiansburg High School, Avi Gandhi. And from Eastern Montgomery High School, Cyrus Underwood. Do I have a motion to approve the 2025-26 student school board representatives as presented?
So moved.
Ms. Purcell and Ms. Franklin, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, next up, the administration's recommendations for the use of carryover funds is attached. Angie Bland, our Director of Finance, is available for questions if needed. Do I have a motion to authorize the superintendent to submit a supplemental appropriation request to the Board of Supervisors?
So moved.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Second.
Great,
Discussion.
thanks. Key your mic, Penny, I'm sorry. I don't think Derek heard you.
There were several different items here to be appropriated and what they were for, and I'm not sure what's what. Can you help me with these?
Good evening. The first page, I believe, the first one that you might be looking at is the request for the supplemental appropriation. And the explanation for that, at the end of the year, you'll see on the first line, for school operating funds, after all expenses were incurred, the remaining balance in the school operating budget was the $120,458. And then 2 of our revenues exceeded the budget amount. One is in our local revenues for the $452,000, and then state revenues. State revenues was $1.7 million. Now, over $1 million in state revenues were for the bonuses, so we received that. So that was what we're carrying over. So the total for that is that $2.3 million. And the request for carryover, if you look at the expenditures where we're asking this money to be placed back, it would go into the 25-26 operating budget for the 09 expenditures, and that's to cover the bonus costs. That would cover, it's $1.5 million, and that would cover the bonus that we just issued here this month. And the remaining balance is the $818,874, and that is that's what we're requesting to put in the healthcare reserve. As of June 30th, we were very happy to report that the balance for the healthcare reserve was $2.2 million. This $818,000 there puts us just over $3 million. We're shooting for $4 for next year, so we're working towards that. But you know, it brings us much closer. We're feeling really good about that balance. So after the bonus funds are moved over, this would be the remaining balance that we're recommending to put into healthcare reserve.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for clarifying.
Absolutely.
Board, any other questions? We have a motion and a second. Okay, great. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Next up, open POs from the fiscal year 2024-25 are requested to be carried over to the fiscal year 2025-26. Angie Bland is available for questions if needed. Do I have a motion to approve a letter to the Board of Supervisors for a reappropriation of open POs from the fiscal year 2024-25 to the fiscal year 25-26 school operating budget?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion on these? Okay, great. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Next up, Virginia Code requires that the superintendent certify that school...
Excuse me for
I'm
a
sorry.
second.
Yes, ma'am.
So this had 3 different slides with it. And with one of those, it included the fuel tanks for $873,000. Was that what we just approved for that to be in that? Or is this another list that we need to approve for capital projects?
Here comes Angie Bland.
Yeah, Ms. Blank can talk about that. These are basic carryovers, though. These were already approved, but go ahead.
That is correct. The list I believe that you're referring to the 873-169, we have initiated the purchase order. After the approval of both boards, we created the purchase order and the work began, but no payments have yet been made. They have not submitted any invoices for payment. So this is a request to move that from the 24-25 funds into 25-26 funds.
So is that what we just approved?
Yes, that list is to just to move that funding. The funding was approved previously. That's just to move that into next year's funds so that when invoices come in, they can be paid.
Okay, because I thought we were just approving, if I can get it open up, the 296,255 for carryover, or for open POs.
Yes, ma'am. The 296,255 is for just the operating budget. So those are all things out of just school operating. The list that has the fuel tank on that, those are for capital purchases. So we have separate approval letters. One is to approve for the 296,255. That's for the school operating purchase orders for instruction and otherwise. And then the next list that is the $36,922,212, that includes all capital purchase orders. Now, you'll see the majority of that, of course, is the Christiansburg High School renovations for the remaining amount left on that purchase order.
But we still need to approve for that to happen, or what?
We've already contracted out. We got these going. We just didn't pay them yet. So obviously the Christiansburg High School is a multiple year project. So we've encumbered that $32 million that we have to pay out. We just didn't get the bill yet. The same with the fuel tanks and the windows and the gym floors. We basically got the stuff, and this is the credit card bill coming, but it's coming after June 30th. So we have to move that money over to the next fiscal year.
Right, and I understand that, right? I'm still saying the letter that we just approved for 296,255 is not the same amount that is listed in the next list for open POs, that is 36 million.
That is correct. The 296,255 is the remaining POs that are in the school operating budget. So that would be purchase orders open for curriculum, instruction, our different categories, our administration and health, instruction, transportation, our ongoing purchase orders. The majority of those are going to be for textbooks that haven't been received yet, operations and maintenance. It may be for some ongoing facilities projects. The next list, that $36,922,000, those are open purchase orders that are awaiting invoices under the capital project. So it's two separate fundings on that, yes. And all of these have been previously approved as projects and the amounts approved, but the purchase orders, the amounts that you see here are just for items that are still ongoing and will go into the next fiscal year and have yet to be paid for. It's ongoing work.
Right, but
In fairness to Ms. Franklin, the way the motion was written in the script implied that we were just approving one letter. We're technically approving three letters.
Correct.
If that's, I'm not sure if,
that's, yeah, and that's what I'm saying is,
right.
I thought we were gonna take each one of these items and approve each one of the letters.
Each one individually, right?
So
We could do
is
that.
What we should be doing, since it's three different documents, that we should be approving three different.
You want to do that? Okay. So we already have an approved motion. How do we want to handle that? We want to assume that motion was for the first letter?
That's what my understanding was, what I was approving.
And the first letter would have been, which one? Yeah, the first letter was the 296.
Right.
So if we want to assume, any concerns, board, if we make that motion for the first letter? And then go back and make the separate motions on the other two letters? Okay. Dr. Roundtree, are you following?
Yes.
Okay. So just to clarify then, the motion that we have already taken and passed was for encumbrances to the school operating budget.
Correct.
Correct. So now, let's be clear in the motion. One sec, make sure I get all these right. So do I have a motion to approve a letter to the Board of Supervisors for reappropriation of open capital account POs from the fiscal year 2024-25 to the fiscal year 25-26? Yeah?
For the 922?
Yes.
Yeah.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Okay, so now just looking at the POs for the capital expenses, any discussion around that?
So I'm going to be voting no because of the fuel tank that is included in here. Because as I stated, when this was brought before us, as a board member, I did not have enough information to make a clear decision as to how this actually was going to impact the district.
Okay. Board, any other comments, questions? Okay. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Ms. Franklin?
No.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. And then lastly, help me with the motion on this one. Do I have a motion to approve a letter to the Board of Supervisors for reappropriation of what? It's the third one.
So these are the balances in the capital projects funding. So these have not yet been encumbered. So this is the balance of what remains as part of what was originally approved as part of that project. You'll see some of these balances sit because at the end of the projects, there are times that you have to do changes or things haven't yet been ordered. Things will be ordered at the very end of those projects. So these are the remaining balance on each one of those projects. So that's going to be, that's the request is for that to be moved over into that capital budget as well.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve a letter of the Board of Supervisors for reappropriation of the outstanding capital expenses
So moved.
from the fiscal year 24-25 to the fiscal year 25-26 club? Yeah.
Sorry, Chair Hudson. Are you finished?
Yes, I think so.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
So this also lists fuel tanks at another $100,000. So is that an addition to the 800?
That's the balance that sits on that. It has not been encumbered.
So what was the total cost? So the total cost was still the I don't have it right in front of me. It was still the 873,169.
Yes, ma'am. That's what has been covered so far for that project, and that's what is currently underway.
Okay, so that other 100 is coming from this same amount of money, not an additional.
That's the balance for that project. That would only be utilized if there are additional needs that come up through the project. This time it is not encumbered.
Okay,
Those funds are not encumbered.
So it was under budget, is what you're saying?
At this time, it would sit under budget, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying. Any other questions or comments, Board? Okay, Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
No.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. All right. All right, next up, Virginia Code requires that the superintendent certify that school crisis plans are updated annually. These plans were shared confidentially with the school board for review. Do I have a motion to certify annual completion of school crisis plans?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Parton and Ms. Purcell, any discussion? Okay. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Okay. Next up, grant applications are attached that have been submitted by MCPS staff for this year's MCEF and CFNRV grant cycle. The purpose of this grant program is to provide educational opportunities above and beyond what is available through public funding and to benefit the broad spectrum of Montgomery County Public School students. MCEF and CFNRV submitted grants are presented to the board for approval. Grant awards will be presented to their respective educators who are receiving them in December. Do I have a motion to approve the submitted grants as presented?
So moved.
Dr. Roundtree and Ms. Franklin? Any discussion?
Since this is one of my responsibilities on the board to serve on the board of the MCEF, and I typically am part of a grant review team. It is part of our bylaws that every grant that is submitted is then approved by the school board before the evaluation process for the grant. So this is a collection of every grant that was submitted. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of these will be awarded. And I'm not quite sure that, unfortunately, that we would have the funds to support all of them. Were we able to award to everyone this year? So just for some context.
So this would give us the opportunity, if there was a grant in here that we didn't support, to not include that in your list, correct?
Correct.
Yep. No, thanks for clarifying. Board members, any other questions or discussion? Are there any grants that any board members have concerns with? They all look great to me.
I'm pretty sure that if there's any grants that any community members see that they would like to give money to, the MCEF will gladly take the money to help support these grants.
That sounds right. Okay, great. If there's no other discussion, Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Ms. Franklin? Yes. Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. All right. In accordance with Virginia Code, the administration shares draft MOUs for school resource officers from the Blacksburg Police Department, the Christiansburg Police Department, and the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. The previous MOUs were approved in 2023 and are due for a biennial review. The topic was discussed at the quarterly school safety meeting on March 27th, 2025, and these drafts are based on the DCJS model MOU dated November 2023. Each of the 3 law enforcement agencies and the division staff have had an opportunity to review the contents and share any concerning areas with council. Our goal is to have these documents signed and in place by the first school day, August 13th, 2025. For reference, the 2023 MOUs are posted on the MCPS website with the Student Services and Safety Department under the heading Relationship with Local Law Enforcement. We present this agenda item for the school board's awareness and the required notice and opportunity for public input as required by code. Any comments or questions on that?
I think the question, your mic was off, Ms. Franklin. I think the question was, if I got it right, were these documents exactly the same? The names were just changed for the local law enforcement?
Correct.
I think there were some modifications. right?
There are some updates. The DCJS updated their model MOU in November, I think, of 2023. We used the model MOU. They are virtually almost 3 identical models using the model MOU. The very last section at the end of each of the 3 has a section that's miscellaneous. There's some local law enforcement language in there talking about their various guidelines around body cameras, overtime, coverage of classrooms to like teach special lessons. But there are some pretty significant updates because there are some pretty significant code changes since the last MOUs were put in place.
Right, I understand the changes, but except for those last statements that pertain to each individual department, they are the same.
98%. I will say Blacksburg Police Department, there's a place where it talks about the principal or principal's designee. Blacksburg Police Department asked us to add a line that says the principal will notify their SRO who the designee is. Of course, that's very, very easy. And I think there's also a section where throughout the document it refers to SD as school division and SOPD as law enforcement. Blacksburg specifically wanted that to be PD. And we, of course, were willing to do that for them. Very, very minor differences. Content overwhelmingly the same. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions, board members? Go around if we want. Not seeing anything. Ms. Purcell?
I guess this is really outside the scope of the MOUs, but as I was reading them in the section about, which you just referred to, Mr. Garrettson, about officers being utilized as guest speakers, a comment that I've had multiple times with parents is that the DARE program seems to not be present in elementary schools, at least the ones in my district these days, and it's something I think that families would appreciate. So I just thought I'd put that out there since it was something that I noticed when I was reading these.
We agree. We had a school safety quarterly meeting last Thursday, discussed DARE again. DARE is getting more and more challenging to staff because the training requirements to teach DARE is very extensive and is infrequently offered, is my understanding, to officers. So it is a situation where it's hard to get new instructors trained, and as officers move on, get promoted, retire, we're losing some of our cadre of instructors. But all three agencies, once again, stressed that it is their intention, their effort, their desire to provide DARE every place we possibly can, understanding that sometimes that may mean a school may have it in the fall, another school may have it in the spring, as we balance instructors as best we can. Yes, ma'am.
And is that federal training or state level, or like
Most of it
where
happens
does
through DCJS. So I would rather not be held, don't hold my feet to the fire. I think it ends up being state training because they train through DCJS. But they have spoken quite extensively about the training. I think some officers go into it thinking it's going to be really, really easy, and then they get there and it really is a special talent to be able to instruct young people.
Absolutely. Thank you for the context. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Dr. Roundtree, any questions or comments?
Nothing at this time. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Bond? Ms. Barton? Okay, great.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much. All right, next up, Dr. Amanda Widener will present the MCPS staffing update.
Good evening, Chair Hudson, board members, Dr. Reagan. As we prepare for the start of school 2 weeks from tomorrow, I want to give you an update on information relating to our current vacancies as well as the positions that we've been busy filling this summer. The first slide just gives you an overview of our current vacancies, and this was as of a week ago, and some of these numbers have changed since that time. So we currently have 4 administrator vacancies. Our certified instructional positions, and that includes teachers and counselors, that's actually down to 13, and we have filled over 100 positions in that category this summer. Our special education certified positions, which includes our SLP, school psychologists, and special education teachers, that is down to 10, so we have 10 remaining vacancies we're working to fill. And then among our classified positions, that number is actually down to 63. And so all of those vacancies represent, we're well under 10% in terms of the categories of the percentage of those positions being unfilled. So we're in a good place at this time. Just to give you an idea of the volume of hiring that we've done this summer, these show the positions that we have filled so far. So we have filled 16 administrator positions for next year, and you've seen many of those positions on personnel reports. 105 certified instructional positions, so that's a lot of hiring that we've done. And that number does not represent just retirements and resignations, but some of those are new positions, and some of those positions that are ones that were filled as a result of people moving to new positions in the school division. We have filled 30 special education certified positions and 48 classified. So if you add all that up, that's over 200 positions that we've worked on filling. And I just want to give credit to the collective effort that it takes to fill those positions. I want to commend the work of our principals, our assistant principals, our administrators who work in the school board office in engaging this process because it is tedious and it is time consuming and it's definitely a team effort. So I want to applaud the work of everybody who's been involved in that and helping us fill the positions and find the best people to serve the needs and best interests of our students. All right, so the next slides just kind of go through each of those categories to show specifically which positions that we are still working to fill. So those are those 4 administrator positions that we're filling. Again, we've already filled 16 this summer. These are our current certified positions. Our ESL teachers positions, that's probably been the one that we've struggled with the most. We still have 2.5 open positions. Again, with the budget, we did add new positions there. Our gifted resource teacher position at CMS is actually filled now, as is the classroom elementary teaching position at KIPS. So good news on the elementary front, all of our elementary teaching positions are currently filled as of right now. We're still looking to fill a reading specialist position, a couple of instructional coaches, a tiered intervention specialist, and then our 504 coordinator specialists. Those were two of those were new positions that were approved in the budget. We all have people to fill those positions, so those will all be filled when school begins this year. Moving on to secondary, these are some of our open positions where we've got a theater arts position at CMS. The history teaching positions, we have filled the one at BHS, and we have a candidate in the workflow for CHS. We're working to fill a math teaching position at Auburn Middle School, an ASL position at BHS, and a physics teaching position at Blacksburg High School. All right, and then these are our current special education vacancies. We're in the process of hiring a physical therapist. We're working to fill specially designed instructional coach positions. We do have 3 speech language pathologist positions we're still working to fill, but we do have some candidates there for those. And then we are actually down to 3 special education teacher positions. So we've made a lot of progress there. Moving on to the classified side, and again, some of these numbers have changed as well. So we're working on filling a number of custodial positions. We have 5 open elementary and 10 secondary, and we are hosting a job fair next week to help fill some of those. 2 HVAC positions. Facilities actually had interviews this week to fill the grounds position, so we're working on that. We are in the hiring process for the plumber. We have a candidate in workflow for the environmental health and safety manager. So again, our facilities department has been busy recently working to fill those positions. 2 bus drivers and our vehicle fleet mechanic position, that is now filled. And then our classified positions within our schools, we have a number of paraprofessional positions that are still open. We are doing a paraprofessional job fair. We're working on setting that up for next week, so we hope to fill some of those positions, as well as several lunch recess aides. We have someone for the ISS para position at BMS. We have someone for the administrative assistant at Harding Avenue. And then the nurse positions that are listed, we have someone at BHS, and we are in the process of hiring at CHS. So those are we're getting closer to having those positions filled. So that's just kind of a status of where we are, what the hiring we've done this summer. You saw a lot of names on tonight's personnel report. I did not break down information in terms of attrition, retention, diversity, just because right now our data is so fluid. It would be hard for me to bring you information that is up to date. So once this is kind of stabilized, in August I can bring you more information just to kind of give you a breakdown on more specific information about retention, diversity, and those types of things that you often like to have.
Okay, thank you so much. School board, any questions on the presentation?
So the 2 HVAC positions, didn't we do something to try to help get those filled? And at one time we got them filled?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part of what you said?
Didn't we do an adjustment or something to combine that with something else to try to help fill that, to make it more attractive?
So we made some adjustments in some of our salary scales. That was, I want to say, earlier this year. But we've had vacancies in that area, at least 1 or 2 throughout the school year. So we're still those are always hard to fill positions.
Yeah, I'll just say again, it comes to the money.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Purcell?
I know there had been a vacant position open at BHS for a German teacher. Is the virtual program kind of filling in for that rather than having an open position?
So, yeah, at this time, we've not been able to find a teacher to fill that position, so we are going to be using, I think, the Virtual Virginia program to transition those students, especially the ones who want to stay in the German program to meet their sequence requirement for graduation. So, yes, we're going to look at a virtual option. We're going to do a virtual option on that.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Roundtree, I accidentally skipped you again. Any questions?
No problem. Just thanks to you and all the staff that help out with getting these people hired and getting these positions filled. Hope we're able to get towards zero sooner. But thank you. Great work.
Can you clarify on the one side, the positions filled for 25, 26, you said those are the ones from the summer. Can you put kind of like some date ranges on what you mean by the summer?
Let me go back. You talking
That
about
one.
this one?
Yeah.
So these are all positions that were open for this 25-26 school year. I mean, some of them we knew about in maybe April
I
and
see.
May.
Okay, right.
Yeah, but that means that, you know, these are positions that were open for 25-26, and we have filled them at this point. And again, some were filled in April, some in May, some in June.
Roger. That's great. Ms. Vaughn? Ms. Barden? Key your mic, Dana, I'm sorry.
So I just wanted to thank you. It's a lot of information to keep up with and juggle, and I know it's hard to bring it to be the correct number because you've got so much going on. But just thank you for keeping up with that and presenting it to us in the manner that we ask you to, and so it's just much appreciated. So thanks for all your work.
Oh, great. Any other questions or comments? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us up to unfinished business. Are there any items of unfinished business?
Sorry, was somebody else going to say something? No.
I think
Okay. I'm not sure exactly where the unfinished business, I think it's got to do with the meeting pre-leading up to this, if that's the case. I just want to touch base on the collective bargaining discussion we had earlier. I did go back and do some research, and we've had 3 items of collective bargaining, and correct, we did approve the night that they were brought forth. But if I remember correctly, we had been given that information in closed session under legal or under personnel, and we had that conversation of knowing exactly what we were looking at that was going to be brought forward. The first one, had to do with the lunch time. The second one had to do with administrative personnel. And this last one, I think the difference is this was the first time that I was aware of it because we didn't have a discussion about it, with understanding that, yes, it was in our board docs. But I think that's where the difference came about that is the fact that we didn't have an opportunity. I understand we were in the summer months. I also understand it's been a lot going on. So not putting blame at anybody, but I do believe that's where the differential piece to that came, is we did not have an opportunity to discuss it. So that's kind of why tonight it was kind of like, what? So I think just touching base on that, I think kind of clears up where that conversation was at. So anyway.
Well, what I recall with that is that Dr. Bragan brought this to our attention a couple of different times, that this was still coming, and that the MCEA president also mentioned it in her last update, that this was the last piece that needed to be done. So it's not that we didn't hear about this before, because we did, and the only other times that we had to discuss anything was because if there was an issue. If there was no issue that needed to be worked through with this and that the board needed to be made aware of, it was brought before us.
I don't know that was my understanding of it, but that's fine. Like I said, I did go back and look, and it just, to me, not having an opportunity for us as a board to discuss it before it came to a meeting, I think is where some of the confusion, for me, in my opinion, is.
Okay, thank you. Any other items of unfinished business? Okay. Any items of new business? You back again?
I'm back again. Okay. Not to keep continuous on the staffing update, but we did have a conversation multiple times that we were not going to put that on the agenda. So I don't know if we have to need to have a discussion and put it on the agenda to have a discussion about it, but you know, we can, and I understand that everybody wants to know, and it's not that late, it's 9:30, but there's many meetings that it is very late, and it is on there, and we have to take time to change it around, and some want to and some don't, and it just causes confusion and conflict that I don't think we need. So I just, our staffing changes consistently all the time. There's constantly new people and people leaving and people retiring and people are hired. And I just don't think that it's fair to have it every 2 weeks or every month. I think every 3 months is more fair to our staff to have to prepare to bring that forth to us. Now, if that's not the will of the board, that's fine, but that's not the discussion that we had at the board retreat and meetings after that. So I'm kind of confused about why we continually have it on the agenda. No disrespect to our chair and vice chair, just asking.
I mean, I do think that my recollection was that we didn't want to do it every meeting, and we backed it off to once a month, right, at the regular sessions. I do think that having it at this meeting was important because this was the last meeting before school starts, right?
That's fair. That's fair.
So, but, I mean, that being said, regardless of previous conversations, let's get that will of the board tonight so we're clear on what we're going to do moving forward, so.
If it's under new business, that means it comes back as an agenda item, correct? Not for discussion tonight.
I guess this is one of those, like, the will of the board kind of situations, right? I don't know if we need a formal vote on it per se. This is just discussion about future agendas. But I would like to hear kind of different board members' opinions on this because I want to make sure I'm, as your board chair, make sure I'm factoring in those opinions as we're working on agendas.
So if it's under new business, doesn't that mean it's back before us for the next, if the board so chooses to have it back?
I guess we would have to
agenda.
vote as a board to see if the board is interested in having that as an agenda item, and that's where I'm coming from.
Right.
So, and I'm asking for once every 3 months. It's not like I'm asking for once a year. I just don't think we need it even once a month. I think because that's every other meeting. It's not like, I mean, even though we have a ton of meetings, it's not work sessions or public meetings. It's,
So are we going to discuss this now, or are we going to discuss it at the next meeting if we choose to?
Okay. So we want to have an agenda item to discuss the agenda. Got it.
okay.
Cool. That's fine. We can do that.
Okay.
We don't need a
Well, it was
vote.
at the will of the board that if everybody wants to have that as an agenda item. If they don't, I will hush and not say another word about it.
Okay. So how about a thumbs up if you want this to be on a future agenda item to discuss?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Say thumbs up then.
Great. Then we will.
I'd like a board monitoring calendar so we just have regular updates on the things that are important.
Right.
So, you know, however
be
we
part
get
of it.
there.
Yeah, I've been
Okay.
talking about that for years.
So maybe to make that discussion a little more productive, how about just a general discussion about the periodicity of certain topics, to include that?
Well, and that would go along with my second item of new business.
How many items you got?
I got a bunch of them since it's only 9:30. I'm holding all this
Hold
in,
on now.
okay? It ain't 1 o'clock in the morning.
There you go, me either.
I'm getting it out while I can. This goes along with the agenda prep and items is a discussion about the length of the board meetings and whether we need to make a policy. I know we have a policy that states that we have to vote on it to go past 11:30, but everybody feels like they have to do their due diligence and not vote no, except for me. And I truly don't think it's fair to our community that tries to watch it. It's not fair to our staff getting out at 12 o'clock and 12:30. It's not fair to the community members that want to come to our meetings and try to get up and go to work the next morning. It's just not fair to us as well. So until we put it into a policy that states that we cannot meet past a certain hour, and I personally don't think it's fair to vote on anything that has to do with important issues at midnight. Our staff, our students, discipline, anything. It's not, we're not doing them due justice by making a decision at midnight on any item, in my opinion, for any future board. I'm not talking about just this one, any future board. I would like to see an agenda item to discuss the length of the meetings and how we can control it from getting to the point. Just as if we said tonight, certain items are in our agendas that we get ahead of time. So how can we regulate that?
Board, how do we feel about a future agenda item to discuss that topic?
Future time, okay.
Yeah, right.
Not agenda items, but the length of our meetings.
A future agenda item to discuss the meeting length.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
right.
If I'm not mistaken, it's state regulation that we have to vote after, when we get to 11:30, whether we're going to extend the meeting or not. And sometimes there are items that need to be addressed after 11:30. And yes, they do. And if we don't, then things start to pile up for the next meeting and the next meeting and the next meeting. And then things start to just fall through the cracks and they don't get addressed the way they should be addressed. So I don't want to be here to the wee hours of the morning. So sure, let's have a discussion about it, but I don't believe that we can say we're not going to go after 11:30 because I believe, depending on what's the agenda and what needs to be addressed, and that goes into just better management. And I don't agree with limiting discussion. So anyway, I don't want to discuss it tonight. I want to put it on the next agenda so we can discuss it then.
Do what?
I said, I don't want to discuss it tonight. If you're going to put it on the next agenda, we need to put it on the next agenda.
The only question I would pose, since we have Nikki here, is, are you aware of other boards that impose limitations on their meeting lengths?
They probably don't go this long, do they?
Oh, and we're present much later than midnight. Most of them. This is a rarity. It didn't used to be, but it is now.
But now, I'm not sure, so I do agree with Ms. Franklin in that there are instances that we do have things that are important that we do need to go ahead and take care of. I'm not disputing that fact whatsoever. But we are doing this every meeting. There is no sense in that. So whether it's we're not doing the agenda a right way, or we need to leave things off of the agenda when we've got other important things on there to make sure. But, I've sat and watched Board of Supervisors meeting, and they discuss things just as important, if not more important, than what we discuss, and they never go to 12 o'clock. So, and neither does town council meetings. So, and that's in Blacksburg too. So I'm not sure how they can communicate and get what needs to be done in the time frame that they do. But I agree with Ms. Bond. We don't need to be making important decisions, and especially voting on important things when we're not thinking clearly, and it's late, and, you know, I'm also concerned about the safety of our employees and our staff. A lot of these people have to travel way further out of town to go home. So there's just lots of things to consider with the meeting time. It may just come down to us figuring out a way how to better use or make the quality of our time efficient. I don't know, but we need to try to do something.
Okay, so we need to decide if we're going to have it on the next agenda so we don't keep discussing it tonight.
Show of hands if you want to have this on a future agenda.
Sure. It really sounds like it would make a good board retreat topic rather than something at a business meeting, but I mean, whatever.
That's
Okay.
right, you can't speak for Ed. Okay, well, Ed will have to speak for himself.
Great. I will say that since the school board retreat, we haven't had to extend the meeting. So it doesn't happen all the time. We made changes, but we'll discuss at the next meeting. It'd be interesting to have Ms. Osborne go back and take a look at the last time we had to extend the meeting. It hasn't happened recently. If you can name one, go for it. Okay, any other items of new business? We're on a roll.
Keep moving.
Okay. Any announcements?
So, as Dr. Bragan talked about our summer meals program, I had the wonderful pleasure of being at Bellevue Elementary for 2 of the weeks, and it was just absolutely so much fun. And seeing the families and how grateful they were to have this food, and them commenting on how it has made a difference with their families was just wonderful. So I can't wait to do it again next year. So this first week that I was at Bellevue, which was our second week, we only did 65 children of 7 meals each, right? Yesterday, we did over 130. So as people learned more about it and we talked more about it and encouraged people to come and, you know, bring a list of kids and whatever, and they did, and it was just wonderful. So I just can't say enough about the program and the staff who helped to make sure it happened. I keep forgetting to tell you all this, but I was asked to be on the VSBA Collective Bargaining Task Force. So I have participated in one meeting so far with that.
That's great. Any other announcements?
Tomorrow, the Bradford University Governor's School for Arts and Humanities is on the agenda at the Virginia Department of Education in Richmond. Mrs. Fotinos and I will be there in support of that program, as well as several other parents, superintendents, representatives from Radford University to provide more opportunities for our students.
Great.
And the race for ACE will be held this Saturday at Blacksburg High School at 9 o'clock. And if you have not registered already, it's still not too late. Come join. And a wonderful way to make your resources count in helping to educate our students beyond Montgomery County schools. And the Dialogue on Race will have their summer summit August the 23rd at Huckleberry Park at 4 o'clock.
Keep going. No, you're doing great. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
You want to do this one?
I don't know. Yes, Christiansburg High School. Ribbon cutting, 4 o'clock on the 5th, Christiansburg High School. It's about time.
Any other updates? Announcements? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just quick wishes to all the students starting back to school before our next board meeting. Hope you all have a great start to the school year and all the successes in 2025, 2026.
Absolutely. Dr. Roundtree, what time is it where you are right now?
Early in the morning.
Fair. All righty. Our upcoming school board meetings are in board docs. Our next, a regularly scheduled meeting is August 19th, next a work session. And with that, I adjourn this meeting at 9:41 p.m. Thank you, everybody.